Have you ever stopped to think what would happen if a huge chunk of the internet just blinked out of existence? Well, for a few hours back on November 18th, 2025, that wasn't a what if, it was a reality. And the cause wasn't some massive Hollywood-style cyber attack. Nope, it was something way smaller and, honestly, a lot more surprising. So let's dig into how one single line of code managed to break the internet.
Cloudflare's own report really cuts right to the chase. When they say significant failures to deliver core network traffic, what they really mean is that the fundamental highways of the internet suddenly had a massive gridlock pileup. For millions and millions of us, everything just stopped.
And look, this wasn't some abstract, far-off technical glitch. This was a catastrophe you could actually see and feel. If you were trying to get work done, do some online shopping, or just browse your favorite sites, you probably got smacked with an error page. That invisible infrastructure that we all just assume will be there, all of a sudden it was very, very visible by its absence. The scale of the damage was just staggering. This wasn't just about websites loading a little slow. We're talking about the core CDN, the system that delivers content quickly all over the globe, was failing. Login systems like Turnstile were completely down, locking people out of their accounts. And get this, even Cloudflare's own engineers couldn't log into their dashboard to fix the problem. I mean, talk about a complete cascading failure. So you could just imagine the scene, right? Alarms are blazing, a huge part of the internet is offline, and the hunt for the cause is on. From the outside, it just looked like total chaos. But inside Cloudflare, engineers were in an absolute race against time to solve this massive global mystery. Now, when a service this critical goes down this hard, your first thought is gotta be an attack, right? The engineers immediately suspected a massive DDoS attack. That's where hackers just flood a network with so much junk traffic that it collapses under the weight. And honestly, based on the symptoms, it made perfect sense. But here is where the story gets really weird. The network wasn't just down, it was unstable. It would crash, then almost magically it would recover, only to crash all over again 5 minutes later. This pulsing on-again, off-again behavior was just bizarre, and it was a huge clue that this probably wasn't your typical cyber attack, which, of course, just made figuring things out even harder. And then they confirmed it. Cloudflare's team ruled it out completely. This was not an attack. So just like that, the most obvious suspect is off the table, which only makes the mystery deeper. If it wasn't a hacker, what in the world could make a global network flicker on and off like a faulty light switch? Well, the answer turned out to be an internal, self-inflicted wound. It was a digital domino effect, triggered by a single, tiny, and seemingly harmless change deep, deep within their own systems.
Okay, to really get what happened here, we need to talk about this one key component, the feature file. Cloudflare's bot management system uses machine learning to spot malicious bots online. And this feature file is basically its instruction manual. It's a list of traits to look for. The best way to think about it is like a bouncer's guest list at a club. It's always being updated to keep the bad guys out.
So here's the entire chain of events, and it is wild. It all started with a totally routine database permission change. But that one little tweak caused a query to accidentally pull in duplicated data. That in turn made that critical feature file we just talked about double in size. The software wasn't built for a file that huge, it hit a preset memory limit, it panicked, and it crashed. And that is the error page that everybody saw. Just a perfect, unintentional storm. Okay, so this right here, this is the heart of the whole problem. A single database query was supposed to return a clean, simple list of data. But after that tiny little permission change, it started pulling the same data twice, creating this duplicated mess. It was one tiny error in logic with absolutely catastrophic consequences. Now, to put this in perspective, the system was built for performance. It had pre-allocated just enough memory to handle about 200 features, which was way more than enough for the usual 60 or so. But when this corrupted, duplicated file showed up with over 200 features, it just blew right past that safety limit. So a system that was designed for speed and efficiency had its own safeguard turned against it. So the problem has finally been identified, but now comes the incredibly high-pressure task of actually fixing it. With basically the whole world watching, engineers had to carefully and methodically bring one of the internet's most critical systems back from the brink. Just look at this timeline. You can almost feel the pressure building. The impact starts at 11:28. For over an hour, it's a frantic search for the cause. By 13:05, they manage a partial fix, kind of like stopping the bleeding. But the real breakthrough comes at 14:24, when they finally stop that bad file from spreading. And then get this, just 6 minutes later, the correct file is deployed globally, and the main crisis is over. Incredible. You know, an incident of this magnitude is never just about fixing the immediate problem. It's about learning from the failure to make sure it never, ever happens again. It's about accountability, and it's about building a more resilient, stronger system for all of us. And you have to give them credit. Cloudflare CEO Matthew Prince was incredibly blunt. There were no excuses. He came right out with a clear, public apology, acknowledging the immense responsibility that they hold. In a moment of crisis, this is what real ownership looks like. So what was the actual long-term fix? Well, they committed to a complete overhaul of their safeguards. The new philosophy is pretty simple. Treat their own internal code with the same level of suspicion as an external threat. They're building better kill switches and literally hunting down any other potential single points of failure across their entire system. And let's be crystal clear, this wasn't some minor hiccup. We're talking about the single worst outage to hit Cloudflare's core network in over 6 years. That's just how significant this failure really was. So what's the big takeaway from all this? When you boil it all down, a single flawed query in a database, triggered by a routine permission change, was enough to cause a chain reaction that took a massive piece of the internet offline. It's a pretty stark reminder of the incredible complexity and maybe the hidden fragility of the global systems we depend on for just about everything.